Hello and welcome. I am Dracoso, and this is a hypnotic discussion on questions to consider in order to communicate with yourself and others when exploring hypnosis, BDSM, or anything that you may be interested in. For this, I'll be asking questions that after each I'll be giving a few moments for you to think about and consider your answers, and then to give a little bit of information as to why you would want to use or consider each of these questions. So, to begin, what interested you in hypnosis or BDSM originally? The reason this question is important is because it gives you a personal understanding of what might have drawn you to hypnosis or BDSM, and it allows the person you're working with to better understand what your initial drive was and to possibly even build out from that original drive. For example, with BDSM, if you are imagining going in and wanting to see extreme or more intense experiences, this can be very different than if you come in just wanting to explore and have a curious understanding of what BDSM is. And for hypnosis, it can give people an idea such as if you saw it on TV versus if you saw a friend doing it, it can give a different mindset as to what is important about hypnosis to you. The next question is, how would you describe how hypnosis feels or what BDSM is like? The reason this question comes up is because if you can describe hypnosis in terms of perhaps say relaxing versus melting versus calming, key words can come into play as well as they can get a better understanding of what you might expect to experience during hypnosis. And for BDSM, again, talking about thinking that BDSM is more of a personal, intimate experience versus a disconnected separation from your normal real life can be very key ideas that the person you're working with needs to pick up on from the start. From there, you would ask, why do you feel that you want to explore hypnosis or BDSM? It's important to keep in mind that when you get into an activity, your desire or interest to explore it may be a bit different from someone else's. And similar to the first question, it comes back to what you personally feel is your connection to it, but also what you feel is now driving you to continue into this exploration. And that brings to how important do you imagine hypnosis or BDSM is in your life at this moment? For some, exploring these areas is more of a personal understanding of who they are, or perhaps something along the lines of a 24/7 interest where they want it to be a full life engagement, versus others may see it simply as a relaxing activity that they can do on occasion. This can change and shape how you want to explore it and the comfort you have with exploring different ideas with an individual. And so, for many of you who may not have as much knowledge in what it means or how it may be, the question comes down to what experience do you have with hypnosis or BDSM? Understanding that people who have less experience may need more guidance, but it also means that your mind is more open to how things may occur. You may have seen a specific example or two if you haven't explored before, and may believe that that is how it outlines, and so having a better understanding of that can help someone you're exploring with build with you. For those of you who have more experience and have gone through this, explaining that may make you a source or a resource for them to work with or communicate with to better understand themselves, and being open to connecting on where your experience may come into play and where a lack of experience may cause more issues helps you to frame how you can explore. One very important question that evolves as you explore is, what role do you imagine you play as someone being hypnotized or someone who is hypnotizing someone else? For some, being a hypnotist is about control. It's about stating how things are going to be and being in a dominant role, while others may simply imagine it as a guide or a service dom, where you are providing a calming experience to someone so that they can relax. For people who are being hypnotized, they may imagine themselves as simply a submissive, someone who's being guided and feeling comfortable with others, while some may imagine themselves as a full slave and being controlled and not having a right to refuse or to do otherwise. So understanding where their mentality is and how far they may go is important so that you can match up and align with what you're expecting versus what they may be expecting. So from there, especially when you think about what you are willing to do, the question comes to, what are things that you are uncomfortable with doing? Now, this is similar to the idea of limits, as some and many know what they are. For some who may not, we can cover that in a moment. But when you think about what are things you're uncomfortable with doing, this can outline much of how your mentality may resist certain ideas, as well as where you may find your limits and boundaries come from. Identifying and understanding what you are uncomfortable with can also outline for yourself how to respond to certain activities you do and don't want to engage in by simply experiencing what is it that you feel drives you away from something. And this leads to the idea of what are your limits, or what are activities that you feel you cannot do and will not do. Quite often, common limits are things such as to not have activities interfere with your relationships with family and friends, to not interfere with work or school, and quite often to not do things that are dangerous, that may be life affecting, and that are things that you would feel uncomfortable with or go outside of what you personally agree with. And this, while similar, is not the same as the question, which I also would be curious to ask, is what are your phobias, or things that you are afraid of? These are more ideas of what are you involuntarily, or quite often voluntarily, uncomfortable with. These are things that may be hardwired as a fear response. This does not mean that they cannot be overcome, but it means that these are things that at the moment will have a strong negative reaction. For myself, that is a fear of swimming, and of course not coming back from swimming. And the reason I bring this up is because with any type of fear, the opposite can also be seen quite often as a comfort, such as I have a fear of heights, so being able to feel like I'm firmly on the ground in a safe position is something that actually helps to calm me. So looking at what the opposite of the phobia may be can give signs and interests as to what you can build out with to help them to relax. And so as we look at what does and doesn't work, the question really comes down to, what are some of the main ideas or areas you want to explore with hypnosis or BDSM? For some, this is more clear-cut, as things that they have already looked into and wanted to understand. It helps to build out what you may imagine is possible, or that you have experienced, and it gives an idea for the person you're exploring with how they might be able to build further, or what they might be able to grow with, so that it gives a more clear understanding of what you may want to do from the start, so that they can build out and show you what else may be possible. And for what is possible, a general question that I ask when I explore with someone is, to you, what does it mean to think? It seems to some like a basic question. Thinking is a processing. It's a point where you try to figure things out. These are some answers that people may give, and thinking, especially when we are trying to determine things, much of our thinking is done passively based on things we've already figured out in the past, such as how to walk. We don't need to think about walking other than if we're in a situation where it requires more focus. And quite often, just like when we're talking with someone, if it's an answer we've already given before, such as what is our favorite color or what is our favorite animal, we may not think about the answer. It may simply be something we already understand. And so quite often in our lives, we begin to gather enough information, just like when you go into hypnosis or BDSM, and there are underlying reasons as to why we do things that we just passively accept in order to continue on to more complex reasoning. But slowing down to question what does it mean to think about each of these questions is a very important factor with understanding why you enjoy things and how to make it more effective. And it really comes to understanding more of what works and what doesn't, or what is important and what is not in our lives. And so with hypnosis, there are very common words that people may use when they're exploring. And these words include, just to let you know, these may have an effect, just so that you're aware, of relaxing or calming you. And so some of these words are deeper, relax, calm, blank, or empty. When you hear these words, what do these words make you think of, and how do they make you feel when you hear them? Each of these words, while very similar, can have a very different meaning, and sitting down to understand how each of these words may affect or impact you are very clear signs within your own mind as to what is important and how you are able to relax. For some people, these words have no effect, and for others, they can have very strong effects. And spending some time thinking for yourself and spending some time talking with others is important. Understanding how your mind works is very important, especially when asking a question such as, what is the most clear idea or image that you can imagine? And this can be a vacation, a desire for the future, or something you imagine that you hope to achieve. So again, the question is, what is the most clear idea or image you can imagine? This gives a bit of understanding as to how your mind may be able to build out sensations or ideas in your own mind and connect you with hypnotic ideas, or to connect you with BDSM in exploring different experiences and what may be key factors that are important to you. Being able to sit down and say, perhaps you can imagine something for work or school more clearly than you could for vacation or exploration out in the field. And so it is important to consider, what is your mind able to connect to well? Another question, which is one I use commonly, is what are things that you do or activities you engage in that you relax naturally? This could be anything from reading a book to going for a swim. And understanding that if you're reading a book, it could be everything from a basic practice where you enjoy engaging stories, and it may require the story to be engaging. It may require you to be in a certain position or to be in a certain headspace. And for things such as swimming, it may be the repetitive actions and motions. It may be the environment. And being able to identify what it is that relaxes you can be very useful for exploring in new ideas with hypnosis, or for just exploring with people in general. Which leads to the question, when do you feel the most safe and the most comfortable? For some, it's an easy question to answer, for they probably have a very specific idea in mind. For some, it may not be as easy to answer, but this helps to give clues as to what you find as important. For some, it's being with people they trust. For others, it may be being in a quiet place where they can be comfortable. And this may relate back to extroversion and introversion, but as well, it may relate back to a personal interest as to how you feel comfortable. And this can really outline what you can do to increase your level of comfort, as well as during aftercare to help you to recover if there was a negative experience, or to feel comfortable with continuing with hypnosis if you're reaching new areas or new points in your exploration. And this brings back the idea of activities that we engage in. How would you, if you were to describe or to explain it to someone, how would you explain to someone else what your favorite activity is? It's also important to understand with this that you want the person you're talking with to come to a similar awareness that you have for why it is your favorite activity or what it is your favorite activity. And the reason is that we spend so much time coming to create an understanding for ourselves that we aren't always able to communicate with others how our internal understanding and reasoning connects with our activities. And so being able to question how we explain things and how someone else receives them helps us to connect with the communication we need to give and to connect with the person that we are trying to communicate with. And the really big question that you can ask yourself is when you imagine, say, a best friend, a close family member, or someone who you feel fits this idea as close as possible, why do you feel you have the connection that you have with them? For some, it's due to having past experiences with them that are very positive, that you feel, and you may talk about what they have done for you or what it means to have them in your life or why it is that they are so important. And for many, it's because they have taken actions or done things that either align with what we would agree with or approve of, or that go beyond that and do things that we feel are either may impress us or may make us feel more comfortable that they have a similar understanding to our own. And for people who are even closer, such as best friends, they may do things that interest us and draw our overall understanding to what we feel makes sense, but also that we feel we enjoy. And so having this connection with them, understanding the steps or the pieces that make us connect with them, can help us to also see the differences between what we get with them and what we may need to do with someone who we've just met, and the differences as to where our comfort levels may be. This helps to open our mind to where would I want them in our lives, and where would I want them when I am interacting with them, to understand how to communicate. And this really brings back to a final question for this is, what interested you originally in listening to this podcast and listening to Brain Cage overall? It may have been just for a bit of fun. It may have just been a random interest that drew you here. But I ask this question because a lot of people go and explore nowadays into new areas, and they do it because of a random interest or a draw. And it's to slow down enough and to think of what really does interest you, or why are you so connected to all these different things? Why are you so interested in exploring one area or another? And it brings the question about simply and internally, if I'm exploring this, what am I getting out of it? And why do I feel that this would be important for myself to know? And why is it important for whoever I'm exploring with to understand why it's important to me? And that's a general question that you can think about, and hopefully from this recording that you have gained a little bit of information and knowledge, and that this might help you with communicating in the future. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully take care and stay safe.